Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly broadcast dedicated to helping you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they make theirs. Today's topic is product launch and messaging. My name is Greg Alexander. I'm the CEO of SBI, and I'm also your show host today. And joining me today is Rob Lips. So Rob, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on what time you're listening to the podcast. My name is Rob Lips, and I head up U.S. sales for Intuit.
Okay, very good. So as I mentioned at the top, we're going to talk about product launch and messaging. And Rob, as I understand, you got a pretty diverse background that makes you qualified for this topic. Is that right?
Yeah, I started off my career in marketing and brand management at Procter & Gamble. And then I moved over to Intuit in the high-tech industry. And in my last 16 years at Intuit, I've done marketing. I've also done product management, user design, and then most recently moved into the sales organization.
Okay, very good. That's what I thought. I was, in preparation for our interview, I looked at your background and thought you'd be a great guy to talk to about this. So let's go ahead and jump into the questions. So again, the topic is product launch and messaging. So my first question is, a little high level, but we'll start here. How do you enable your salespeople to bring to light the real life problems your customers are looking to solve?
Well, we sell mostly to small businesses and mostly through telesales. And we have a four-step sales process that all of our consultants use. And, after the first step of introducing themselves and understanding who they're talking to, they go into a inquiry mode where they try to really understand the customer's small business, call it a day in the life of our small business owner. And through that discussion and using a lot of inquiry and open-ended questions, they understand the needs and the problems that the small business is facing. And once you understand, their problems, then it can help you go to the next step of recommending this right solution of products and services to meet those needs and solve those problems.
Okay, very good. I'm encouraged to hear that you've got a sales process and that it's followed. Many times when I talk to businesses that sell to small businesses via telesales, they feel as if they don't need one, and I disagree. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are doing that. All right, my next question is how do you involve the salespeople in the product launch message development and story creation? Do you ask the salespeople? Do you get their input when you're getting ready to launch something new about messaging?
Yeah, in high tech, I think if you go back a decade ago, a lot of times products were built and then thrown over the fence, and the marketing and the sales team had to figure out how to sell it, making up their messaging, making up their marketing. That didn't work that well. And Intuit realized that. And so we have a really close partnership between the sales, the product management, and the marketing organization. And there's two key ways that we make sure we get that input before a product launch. First of all, we have a sales council, and that's made up with managers and some of the frontline sales consultants. And they get on a call regularly with the marketing and product management team and talk through what they're learning directly from the customers as they're going through the sales process. And as we move into new product launches, the product management team and the marketing team will share that with the sales council and get feedback. That's one way. The second way is that we actually do joint sales calls. The marketing and the product management team will actually come out to our call centers and listen into calls, or if we're going into the customer's business, they'll go along, and we call those follow me homes, and they'll actually spend time with the small business listening to the sales conversation. And those two approaches, the council and then the joint sales calls, really make sure that we are all aligned on what the right positioning and messaging is for a new product launch. But the one thing I'd add is that saying that we do it for a product launch implies that you're only doing it when you do a product launch, and I don't think that's the best practice. I think you should have marketing and product management talking to sales year-round, whether you're doing a new product launch or not, because who spends more time with the customer than the sales team? And so you're constantly getting insights and new learnings that you can take back to marketing to improve their messaging or to the product management team to improve the product.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The reason why I'm pigeonholing us today into product launch is we just came out with our new research. Every year we publish this big research report. Excuse me. We've been doing it for 10 years, and it's meant to capture the emerging best practices of the top 10% of growth leaders, sales and marketing leaders that are consistently hitting the number. And one of the areas that came up is there were a lot of failed product launches. More so than in years past, and quite a bit more so than last year. And when we dug into possible root causes for that, there was a messaging problem. And where that did happen is when they didn't have a sales council, they weren't doing follow me homes, there was no relationship between sales, product, and marketing. So you're 100% correct. But tech companies are spending millions, if not billions of dollars on a new product, and if it flops, it's really, really expensive. So we're trying to dig into that a little bit.
It's expensive, and it's also time consuming, and that's time that competitors can launch before you and get ahead of you in the marketplace, and then it's really hard to catch up with them.
Yeah, no question. All right, let me move on to my next question, which is the messaging you provide your sales team the same messaging they provide the customer, or is it different?
Yes, it is the same. We work with the marketing team to ensure the messaging that we train our sales consultant on is the same messaging that they're using in outbound marketing, pay-per-click, banner ads, television, whatever it may be. Now, that said, oftentimes as the sales team starts to sell the product and talk to customers, they will find new and different ways to position the features, position the benefits, and adjust the messaging to get to a better close rate. Mm-hmm. And that's fine as long as it's staying consistent with the higher level brand strategy. But what's important at that point is that we circle back with the marketing team and say, hey, we've been selling this product for X number of weeks, months, and these two messages are really resonating, but this third message, that's not working. And as we've talked to customers, we found out that we have this new message around saving time, for example, that really resonates with the end user, and we'd suggest that you might want to go include that into your messaging brief. Mm-hmm. And so we start on the same message, but I would say that it evolves over time through that relationship, that back and forth.
So the concept of stay on message, stay consistent to the brand message, I love. We see so often what we call message distortion. So you come up with this great message, it's done through all of these means that you're talking about, it gets to the sales team, and the sales team is allowed to modify it, kind of think on their feet, be in the moment, depending on the sales cycle and the customers that they're dealing with. And that's great because it's probably better for the customer to do it that way. The problem with that, though, is if you're not careful, you can wake up with 25 different messages. So how do you prevent message distortion?
Well, I think two things. One is what's your higher level brand strategy? What is the benefits that you're promising the customer? If you're saying, hey, I'm all about saving you time and getting you better cash flow, whatever the sales team is doing has to ladder back to that. Mm-hmm. And there's 10 different ways you can tell someone that they're going to save time. There's 10 different ways you can tell someone that they're going to get better cash flows. You can use different data points, different features of the product to make them believe that, depending on the unique needs of the customer. If the sales team starts going off brand strategy and, say, talking to them about how they're going to get more new customers, and again, this is small businesses, and that's not a benefit that we are trying to build the product to deliver, or it's not a core message, then that's when I think you get to message distortion. Mm-hmm. And that's where my frontline leaders who sit with the sales, the team, and listen to their sales calls would rein them back in and say, hey, you're off strategy. Even though it might sell you a couple extra deals, it might close some deals, you're off strategy, and you need to pull that back.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, so many of you listening to this are carrying a big number tied to new products just launched or soon to be launched. Compelling messaging is mission critical. Without it, salespeople will struggle selling the new product. So this is the reason why we're talking about this today. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but before we do, I want to let our audience know that we just released our 2017 workbook. When this podcast is aired, it'll be mid to late summer. And if you're entering the planning season, you're going to want to get your hands on this. It's a beast. It's 250 pages, and it documents kind of state of the union, if you will, on what the best of the best are doing to make their number. It's titled How to Make Your Number in 2017. It was written for executive leadership teams inside of companies with aggressive revenue growth targets who have a lot on the line and not a lot of time to waste. So you can get a copy of it at sbi.tips/2017 workbook. Let me repeat that, sbi.tips/2017 workbook. Okay, you're listening to the SBI podcast. We'll be back in a moment with more from Rob Lipps.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI Magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI Magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Welcome back. You're listening to the SBI podcast. I'm your host, Greg Alexander, and today's guest is Rob Lipps, Vice President and General Manager at Intuit. Today, the topic is product launch in messaging. So let's jump back into the questions. And Rob, here I'm going to get into this kind of, I guess, growing best practices, the idea of storytelling. There's other words for it, but this is the concept of connecting with customers and buyers emotionally as opposed to logic through the power of storytelling. So are you guys experimenting with that at all?
We have actually.
And how's it going?
It's going well. You know, I talked earlier about a big part of our sales process is to talk to the customer and understand their needs and the problems they're facing as a small business owner. And we do that so that we can then make a recommendation to them on the right solutions, the right products and services to meet their needs. We oftentimes use storytelling about other small businesses that were in similar situations to bring it to life and give it more credibility.
Yep.
You know, talking about another small business that was frustrated on how much time they were wasting doing accounting versus taking care of their customers and focused on growing their business, that allows the person who's on the other end of the conversation to say, you know, I relate to that. And then to go to the next step of telling them, hey, and this person, when they started using QuickBooks, when they started using our product, they freed up hours and hours of time so that they could go back and focus on what they really love, which is running their business. That's inspirational, and it's oftentimes motivating for them to make the decision and pull the trigger.
Yeah. You know, we've seen some great results from embracing storytelling, particularly Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. So for those that are listening or watching, you might do some Google searching around Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And again, it's around connecting with buyers on an emotional level. You know, we need to remind ourselves that people buy an emotion justified with logic, and stories is the way that human beings connect with each other via emotions. The reason for all of this, and I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit, is we need to defeat the status quo. What we have found, and I don't know if it's the case for you, Rob, but I'd like to hear your perspective on it, is that, yes, you have competitors, but the biggest competitor by far is a resistance to change and just sticking with the status quo. So have you seen that in your stories that you tell about other Intuit customers? Is it designed to defeat the status quo?
It definitely. I think a lot of people realize that changing what they're doing today is necessary, but they worry about how hard it's going to be, the cost of it, their chance of success. And so if you can tell them a story about somebody else who was in a similar situation and took the plunge, used your products and services to try to get to a better outcome, and was successful, that's going to give them more confidence that they should as well. And we really focus on the benefits of the ease of changing from what they're using today to our offering, and then cost efficiency, that it's not going to cost the farm. But then the last one is we really try to quantify the benefit. We try to give very hard numbers. If you go from using manual accounting to ours, you will save on average 6 hours a week. If you use our payment processing, our credit card processing, versus sending a bill in the mail, you'll get paid 3 times faster. And the combination of the story plus the hard numbers is where we've found that we get the most leverage to get someone to step away from the status quo.
Yeah. I started SBI in 2006, so we're in our 10th year, and I started it from my kitchen table with my co-founder, Aaron Bartels. And I'm very much the kind of the classic sales leader, and Aaron is kind of classic sales ops. And one of the first things he said that we needed to do when we got going was to buy your product so that we could accelerate cash flow. So we've been a customer for 10 years. And your story on him about ease and saving time and collecting invoices faster worked. So you guys are a great success story there.
Well, if you've got a messaging that works, a formula that works, there's no reason why you can't keep using it. You just have to make sure that you're partnering with your product management team so they're continuing to evolve the product and remain competitive with whatever else is coming out in the marketplace. Going back to product launches, there's a lot of companies that had understood their customer need. They had a really good solution for that customer need. The sales team and the marketing team came up with a great message, but then other solutions came out, other products came out that met that need better.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't that they weren't solving the right problem. It wasn't that the sales team didn't have the right messaging. It's just their proof point became less credible because other people were doing it better. And that goes back to your point that you got to have sales tied in really close with the product management and the marketing teams.
Yeah. Let me merge my last 2 questions of this segment together. So this storytelling or messaging framework is designed to convince customers why change. We call it the why change story. And we got to add a word to that, I think, because it's why change now. And trying to get some of this urgency, because sometimes, especially in the small business segment, at least that's what my clients who sell to that segment tell me, is the why change story is pretty obvious. Yes, I understand I need to do that, but I'm a small business owner. I'm already working 18 hours a day. I don't have the time to pay attention to it. So why should I go through the pain of doing what you're telling me to do right now? So how do you inject urgency into the equation?
So, going back to our sales process, in the conversation that we have with the small business, if we do it right, we've identified problems they're facing. Hey, I don't have enough cash flow to pay my payroll this month, or I have to pay my taxes and I don't understand my books, and I'm worried that I'm going to get penalized by the government. If you know what problem they're facing, then tie your offering to solving that problem. And if they believe it, then it's why would you wait? The longer you wait, the longer you're going to have this problem. Yeah. It's almost a lack of a negative. Why would you want to keep yourself in this really tough situation for another month, even another week? Buy our solution, buy our offerings, and you're going to be in a better place really quickly.
Yeah.
And if you can tie it back to the problems they're facing that's keeping them from doing what they really want, whether it's running a small business or building microprocessors, they want to focus on what they love, not their problems, and that usually is what's helped us get people to get off the dime now versus putting it off for another 2 months.
You and your company are such a great example of the alignment between sales, product, and marketing. So I just asked you, why change now? So tell me your urgency-based question, why change now? And right off the top of your lips, with no prep whatsoever, you cited monthly payroll and taxes, right? And those are 2 things that will create urgency in anybody. I mean, if I thought I wasn't going to be able to make monthly payroll and you had a solution for that, I'm going to get off my you-know-what and do something about it, right?
Exactly.
And April 15th is coming whether I like it or not. And I don't want to get fined. I don't want to get audited, so I got to pay my taxes. So your messaging is so crisp. It's so easily understood. It speaks so clearly to the small business owner. You guys have really just done an amazing job on that. So congratulations to you and everybody else that was involved. It's really inspiring to hear that.
Nice of you to say. A lot of small people working really hard for a lot of years to come to where we are today.
Yeah. All right, this segment reminds us that people make a purchase decision based on emotion. and justify the purchase based on logic. Storytelling in all of its flavors and forms is a great way to connect emotionally with customers and prospects. So keep that in mind as you think about messaging around product launches. All right, we're going to take another break, but before we do, here's something of value to the audience. We just came out with our new app and a new website, and it allows you to create an account and personalize your experience with us. So if you enjoy our content, and we hit you with a lot, a daily blog, a weekly podcast, a monthly TV show, a quarterly magazine, an annual report, plus all our workshops, trips to our executive briefing center, et cetera, you might not want all of that. So just go out to that site and select how often you want to receive our content, in what format, and on what topic, and we'll send to you through the push notification just what you want. So you can download the SBI app at Apple's App Store or go to our new website at salesbenchmarkindex.com/register. Okay, we got one more segment with Rob Lips, so stick around. We'll be back after the break. This is the SBI Podcast.
Do you have too many things to do and not enough time to do them? Is finding time to learn best practices almost impossible? The SBI Podcast is your solution. Turn time spent exercising, commuting, and traveling into productive learning time with a subscription to the SBI Podcast. SBI Podcast listeners get unique insight into real-world sales and marketing issues through interviews with your industry peers every week. Find us on iTunes by searching for Sales Benchmark Index Podcast and subscribe today.
Okay, this is our last segment with Rob Lips of Intuit on the topic of product launch and messaging. I'm Greg Alexander, CEO of SBI and your host. And we've got just 3 more questions here in this our last segment, so why don't I jump back into it. So in the last segment, we talked a lot about storytelling, and you gave me some great examples of why change now. Hey, you got to make your monthly payroll. Hey, you got to pay taxes. The save time story, which seems like a universal story, but applied uniquely to the needs of your buyers through your 4-step sales process. It just creates urgency and helps your sales team. These best practices around your version of your storytelling delivery approach, I mean, how do you publish those to the salespeople and make sure that they're trained on them?
Yeah, training is one of those things that's tough, and I wouldn't say that we've completely cracked the nut. We do it a couple different ways. When we have a new hire class come in, we train them on the sales process, how to use stories. We train them on the product. When there's new product launches, we also do that. But what we've learned is that as people are in their roles over time, they don't always follow those best practices as consistently, and they start to wander. You call it message distortion. Mm-hmm. I might call it sales process distortion. Mm-hmm. And so instead of pulling people back off the floor or off of a plane and sitting in days and days of training, we've started to move to what we call bite-sized chunks of training. It's mostly through online, 10, 15-minute training sessions that'll walk them through a reinforcement of the sales process or some new features that are being released on one of our offerings. And then at the end of it, there'll be some questions and answers that they have to go through to make sure that they absorb the content.
So these bite-sized chunks of training content, which you're distributing online, is this video content? Is this demo content? All of the above? I mean, tell me a little bit more about it.
All of the above. It really depends on what you're trying to train them on. If it's a new product launch, listing out a few features is helpful, yep. But then showing them a video of the actual product and how that feature works is a lot more impactful. Mm-hmm. And so for that case, we'd want to use video. And as a side note, we really try to get our employees into and using our offerings so that they can come across as an expert on the products, and therefore that they're more trusted by the small business owner, by the customer, when they make recommendations.
Mm-hmm. Not only am I a customer of yours, but I'm also a shareholder, and I've been monitoring your movement from desktop to SaaS. Has any of this changed as a result of that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the way you sell a desktop product is very different than how you sell a SaaS product.
Mm-hmm.
And to be completely transparent, our desktop product has been around longer than our SaaS product, and so it has some additional feature functionality that the SaaS product hasn't caught up to yet.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, a SaaS platform gets you a lot of benefits that you don't get from desktop. With an open platform, you can plug in third-party apps. If you have 10 different stores in 10 different states, you can, real-time look up how your small business is doing. And so you have to talk to the customer about the benefits that you get from an online SaaS offering that you don't get from a desktop offering, even though it may not have as many features.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a delicate dance for the sales team.
Yeah, no question. Okay, my last question for you. So we've talked a lot about training in this segment. I want to talk about coaching. And to me, coaching and training is different. And in order for the messaging to be reinforced and for the salespeople to acquire mastery of it and the ability to deliver it, I believe that the sales manager has to be a great coach. So do you share that belief? And if so, what is your, coaching process?
100%. First and foremost, you got to make sure that your coaches have the time to spend with their sales team. And so we've tried different manager to frontline sales consultant ratios, and we went too thin at one time and realized that didn't give the coaches enough time, and then pulled it back. We do training to coach the coaches. They spend a lot of time listening in and sitting with the frontline sales consultants, and then afterwards we'll debrief and give them feedback. We also have something that we call a monthly check-in. A lot of companies will do a performance review once or twice a year, and we realized that just wasn't enough. And so ours, we've moved to a year-round, once a month, you do a 30, 45-minute check-in versus a twice-a-year 2-hour. And that has been received incredibly well by our sales force, and it seems to be resulting in better sales processes, better adherence to our best practices, and bottom line sales.
Yeah, so many of these things that you're doing, like monthly check-ins, are enabled because you're mostly telesales. Do you have any kind of classic outside sales, and if so, do they follow the same kind of cadence, or do they have a different one?
We do have the more complex sales processes. We call on the Amazons and the Staples of the world. We also sell to large enterprises like banks. And now the sales process is going to be more complex. The larger, the more complex the offering is, then usually the more steps you have in your sales process. But we're very dedicated to having a clear sales process, making sure that the team is being coached on how to use each step of that process, and then through interactions with the team, figuring out where we can coach up people, or even just as important, automating things so you take it off the salesperson's back and they can focus more of their time on the client, the customer, versus entering data or tracking something in Salesforce.
Yep. All right, Rob, I could talk to you for hours and hours, but unfortunately we're at our time window, so we all got a little smarter today. You guys are really doing so many things that are fantastic, so thanks for being on the show and your willingness to share.
Gladly. Thanks for the invite.
All right, and I want to thank you, our SBI audience, for tuning in. Without you guys, we can't do this. Thanks for all the positive comments and the amazing download numbers. If you want to learn more about product launch and messaging and all the other emerging best practices that top leaders are deploying to make their numbers, go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register and subscribe. But until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.